I can't remember the last time a movie made me cry, and I it's been a while. Um,
Yeah.
but I really, really enjoyed it. So, my first question for you is, okay, so Kyle Houseman Stokes, he served, 5 years in the U.S. Army and was awarded the Bronze Star for his service in Iraq. So he's the director and co-writer of My Dead Friend Zoe. And I understand the film is somewhat based on his story. It's like, inspired by his story, and that of his platoon mates. So he had written letters to his like dream cast, personal letters. So what was it about his letter to you about starring in this movie that really, what drew you in about his letter to you? And, especially as a longtime supporter of Every Town for gun safety.
Yeah. So Kyle also had worked with Everytown, which was part of his letter. Um, and I think uh, his letter was talking about what he experienced, which is, as he says it, this movie is 93.5% exactly his life and his experience. And I think in the end, not only did I admire what he was saying, and I saw a short film that he made this is a shorter form of this movie that I thought was really well directed, but also his mission was to help people, and that has always been my mission too. I want to, as a human and as a artist and as a person in the world, I want to put good things into the world, and like tell fart jokes, but like also put those are good things. I want to do good in the world, and this seemed like a really um interesting way to do it. And also Ed Harris was attached and Sonequa Martin Green was attached, and I was like, well, this sounds like it's gonna be good.
Also, what I found really interesting, I thought it was really beautiful that he sent like letters, a concept.
Uh,
To hear about that often anymore. So, but I also found it really interesting, and I know you've been asked about this generally, that what made you interested in, or what did you think about it being like kind of like a gender flipped version of his story, through the lens of two women of color. So like, like I said, I know you've been asked this a little bit, but what do you think it adds to the story, these changes to his story?
well, I think you'd have to ask him what it adds to his story, but I think what it adds is something to the landscape of movies, which is that, like, how awesome and rare is it that like a white dude decided to cast two women of color in his story instead. I think he was like, he saw it as like, um I don't want to speak for him, but I think that it was also a way to separate himself a little bit from it because it is so close to home. But I think he also was like, hey, this is an underrepresented group, and I'd like to use this chance that I have to highlight them, and why not? Like, why not have them be the leads of this movie? It made sense to him, and it made sense to us too.
Right. Oh, that's an amazing way to look at it. And I could, yeah, like you said, that I would imagine wanting to change it a bit just for even the sake of your own
Yeah,
I want to say peace, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
yeah.
Um, so you're obvious, like it is, like I said, it's for the first time in a long time, a movie made me cry, and I was a little surprised by that, but at the same time, it's like I guess kind of in the dramedy realm. So, you're obviously quite funny as this like warped version of Merritt's friend Zoe, who appears as visions in her daily life. And I know you've called her a guilt demon, which I,
Yeah.
I love that. So how did you balance being Merritt's sense of familiar comfort with being the very thing that's like also eating at her psyche in a way?
Yeah, great question. I think that it was challenging because I wasn't playing a human in a lot of ways, and so like the motivations weren't mine. It was like it was like, what does her guilt want? And how, like, how, why does it want to keep her there? And what are the tactics it's going to use to do that while covering itself up in this veil of familiarity and like warmth and comedy and sense of humor? And I think, I think the different tactics were like, hey, let's just stay home and watch TV, or let's just do this, or let's have fun, or I'm going to make this joke because I want to stay here. It's a comfort blanket, but it's a lead blanket, like, and it has some spikes and it's both. And I think it was interesting for me to play that because then I also had to play real Zoe and a live Zoe, and I wanted them to feel similar but very different. I wanted real Zoe to be much more vulnerable than this like persona of this like thing. And I think, without any spoilers for almost the end of the movie, you see why that needed to be necessary, like why they are different. And it was challenging, but it was really interesting for me to get to do that, and to get to play both characters. And also, it's maybe three because one is like during her service, and one is post her service, and then there's guilt demon Zoe. So yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, I noticed that, Zoe's kind of cracking jokes the whole movie, but kind of like you said, when she's serving, there's almost this weight to the jokes where it's like there's always something behind the joke that's like, oh, she's really suffering in a way. But
Yeah.
guilt demon Zoe, it's more just like jokes, but with, I guess, like you said, spikes. So,
Yeah, and it's also like what Merritt's memory of her is. So it's not like exactly
yeah.
it's not exactly her, right? It's just like bits and pieces put together to make her feel like she has some comfort, even though that comfort isn't good for her and is
Oh,
mean sometimes.
oh yeah. And like
Yeah.
controlling in a
Yeah.
way.
Manipulative. Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing to think about just in general that our guilt controls us in a way.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was
Doesn't
really
let us have fun. It doesn't let us go out. It doesn't,
go
yeah.
on dates. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So what did preparation look like for a film with such serious topics like, combat stress and PTSD? So aside from Houseman Stokes, did you speak with other veterans?
Yeah, I mean, 90% of our cast were veterans. Most of our cast were veterans. And Kyle, obviously this was his story, and he showed me tapes and talked to me a lot about his friends who Zoe is based on. And so I drew a little bit from that and from his experiences, but and also from the conversations that we had with all the other veterans um that were there with us. The movie came together really quickly, for me at least. I didn't have much time to prepare outside of the movie, but I think the important thing to remember is like with a veteran or with a doctor or with an alien, like I'm not a doctor. I'm not an alien. I'm not a veteran. I'm just an actor who's trying to capture what it's like to be a person that happens to be those things. And so veterans are just people that had those experiences and were put in those situations. And that's the most important thing to put forward. And then after that, I don't want to look dumb when I say army words and when I move in certain situations and when I carry a gun in a certain way or whatever, I want to look like I know what I'm doing. So the technical stuff is also important to me because I also don't want veterans to see this movie and go like, that's not what happens, or that's not what I would do. And Kyle was really sort of eagle-eyed with that as well.
And actually, that was like kind of my follow-up. As soon as you mentioned that, I was like, interesting. Like, who is there someone on set that helps with that? But
Kyle, for
I
sure.
guess, yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, yeah,
Well,
that
like I wore Kyle's actual like camo pants. Like I like we wore a lot of his stuff.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
Oh, oh, I love that. Did that in a way make you feel closer to the story, or
definitely. Definitely, yeah.
And so, obviously there's a lot of kind of like heavy themes going on in the movie. So, with but also like, good themes like mental health awareness, like not just trauma, but trauma as well. But awareness, the strength in moving on and self-forgiveness. But so there's a lot to discuss in My Dead Friend Zoe. So what do you feel like is the overall message you want viewers to take away from the film?
Mm, I think just to not assume that the strong people in your life are okay, and also to talk about what's going on with you um, is important, and to not feel like you need to be. This is not a movie for veterans. It's a movie for everybody, and I think everybody can relate to um, different forms of trauma, and certainly a lot of people can relate to different forms of PTSD, and I think it's a lot of us think that nobody wants to hear it, or that we need to be stoic or need to be strong. But if something is really affecting you, that it's important to just reach out, and that's what I would like people to take away from this.
Yeah, that's amazing. And like you mentioned something about there's all different, it's not just a movie for veterans and how
Oh,
PTSD affects like, not just veterans. Merritt says something in the movie like what did she say? Like the
oh, I know
military.
what you're talking about. It's like my favorite line. It's like the veterans don't own PTSD, but we're just the best at it, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a great line as well.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so, you mentioned something about, playing a doctor. So I do have a question about Grey's Anatomy.
Okay.
I know you were a guest star in season 20, and then you kind of became a recurring character as Dr. Monica Beltran. So, and you have several episodes in season 21. So what did you like about the character to make you stick around for several episodes? And do you see yourself, potentially returning for more?
Um, I I really like the crew, honestly. I think the crew is awesome, and I like so many of my fellow cast members that I've gotten to work with are so great. And the character itself, I felt like I had never played a doctor before, which was interesting to me to do, and I really wanted to learn the technical aspects of it. And I spent a lot of time asking a lot of questions to the medical advisors on like how to move, what to do. I wanted to feel as real as possible. Um, and I just like that she was kind of, I like someone who is unlikable because they care about their patients more than you. Like I wish that was a doctor that I had. I think we all, I feel like Grey's is kind of wish fulfillment in that like I've never seen that many good doctors who care about their patients in one place.
Mhm.
I wish that that was the case. I have met many good doctors and many good nurses. I think I've met more bad ones. And I think we all have probably met more bad ones. And I wish that wasn't the case. And so like I want to put something aspirational out there. And I really like that she comes across as like, I don't care about you. I care about my patients. Like I just liked that idea. Because I wish someone felt that way about me or my family or my friends, and their care, you know? And I think the incredible thing about Grey's is like, the show is such an institution. It's been on for so long, but it's not just TV. Like the fact that there are so many more female surgeons now because that show existed than there were when the show started. So like this is the power of media and of film and movies. I know how TV and movies have affected my life, and I know that it's affected other people. So I think to see something on TV that you think, oh, that's cool. You know, I could be a doctor that's like that, that cares about my patients in that way. That's something I'd love to put out there.
Yeah, that's an amazing answer. And yeah, I guess what you said about movies and TV affecting you, I think that's why both of us are here right now because I feel
Yeah,
the same way. Uh,
yeah.
yes, that's great. And then I want to hear if whatever you can tell us about the upcoming limited Netflix series, The Beast in Me. So I know
Mm,
you're playing Claire Danes' character, Aggie Wiggs's ex-wife.
yeah.
Um, so what can you tell us about the series and your working relationship with Claire Danes?
Literally nothing.
Cool.
I can't tell you anything about the series. I can tell you that it is so good. Like I was reading these scripts like page turning, like what's gonna happen next. I'm obsessed with how good it is. And that is what I can tell you. It was I was very honored to be a part of that project because I was like, wow, this is great. And it's also I think you'll see me doing something I have not done before. And that's exciting, or a side of what I can do that I haven't really done before. So excited
Interesting.
about that. Yeah.
What can at least what can you say about your working relationship with Cardanes? Like what was it like
Oh, she's great. She's a legend, even though she's still very young. But like I've been watching her since I was a kid and she was a kid, you know. I think she's like 6 years older than me or something like that. So we're not that far apart in age, but like, you know, I grew up on My So-Called Life and Romeo and Juliet and all the other things that she'd done. And I've always been such a fan of hers. And then to watch how she transformed that into like her career as an adult and doing like Homeland and Fleischman is in Trouble, like she's just so good. And I've been very blessed in my career to get to work alongside and across from actors who make me forget to say my line because I'm just like watching them work, just so impressed. That's been a real blessing to get to have that like front seat to watch Claire Danes work, you know?
I love that you talk about it like that. That it's a
Yeah.
friend where you're just like you're like eating popcorn, but you're like, oh wait, I'm doing my job.
Right, right. Oh, wait, I'm your ex-wife. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Well, those were all my questions for you.
Thank
This
you,
is
Bianca.
thank you so much, Natalie.
It's so nice to meet you. By the way, your hair is awesome. I love your haircut and your and the blonde. It's so cool.
Thank you
Um,
very much. I was thinking about maybe going back to brunette, but now I'm not.
no, the blonde is really good. The blonde is great. It's really nice to meet you. Have a good one. Bye.